welcome to Lunch with Sibos, with me, Nadine Dereza.
And with me, Chia. Now, coming up in the program, we're going to be looking at the major trends and innovations in global transaction banking with Nadine, JP Morgan's Head of Treasury Services.
We're also talking to Shekhar Bhandari, the Head of Global Transaction Banking and Precious Metals at Kotak Mahindra Bank. And he's going to tell us about India's banking revolution.
Plus, we have a panel discussion previewing the Global Payments Innovation Session here in Geneva today. So a lot to get through in our last lunchtime show of Sibos 2016. But first, our Sibos Game Changer interview. Don't look so surprised. It had to come to an end at some point in time. But earlier I did have a great discussion with Amber K. She is a cyborg anthropologist. Now, people are thinking, something's wrong with that term, and what exactly does it mean? Well, listen in and find out. My next guest studies the interactions between humans and computers. Now, to you, this might sound like something from Star Trek, but for Amber, it's something she grew up with. Both her father and grandfather were involved in artificial intelligence research. And she is one of Fast Company's most influential women in technology, and her TED Talk, "We Are All Cyborgs Now," has been viewed over 1 million times. Today's Game Changer interview is with cyborg anthropologist Amber Case. Amber, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So what is a cyborg anthropologist?
A cyborg anthropologist studies the interaction between humans and technology and how technology affects culture. It's really important if you're building technology to understand people. Otherwise, you're just making technology for technology's sake. And we all know about those annoying beeps and buzzes from our phones constantly interrupting us. We need the kind of opposite from what we have, which is interruptive technology right now. We need a kind of calm technology that's there when we need it, not when we don't, that gets out of the way and lets us live our lives and gets us back to the important human stuff instead of turning us into robots.
So you're talking about technology that's kind of seamless. It's there, but we don't even notice that it's there.
Yeah, it's there. Well, think of electricity. Electricity is there and you don't really notice it because you're used to it. And unlike technology that we're used to today that crashes on us, if electricity crashes, it's absolutely unacceptable. Yet we put up with these technologies in medicine and banking and in all these different industries that crash on us and aren't built to last. That we have to update something and our phone doesn't entirely work. And I don't think we should stand for that anymore. We should have technology that's just as resilient as what we're used to in our homes.
But isn't that just part of the process, that when you start with something, it may not work as well, but eventually you get there?
Hopefully. Although it's been pretty okay for everybody to make things that don't necessarily hold up under stress.
So are you saying the technology that we have out there is not good enough, but we're just putting up with it?
Yes, absolutely.
So what then? Do we not have this technology and just wait until we've got it working perfectly?
No, I think there should be a little bit more rigor around things. Like, for instance, there's this new example of kind of a Schrodinger's cat, right? So there's all these pet feeders out that are connected to the internet. And the problem with that is that they're connected to central servers, and sometimes these go away, these fail. And so there was an example where all these people had their pets being automatically fed, all their cats being automatically fed, but then the server crashed, and they were, miles and miles away, sometimes countries away. They didn't know where their cat was or whether it was dead or alive. And now this is a silly story right now, but imagine if that was a pacemaker, imagine if that was your money, imagine if that was your self-driving car. I mean, these are kind of canaries in the coal mine for what could really happen because we're so close to technology. It's not just electricity in our homes, it's with us every day. We're no longer in a world where we're sitting in front of a desktop computer. We have these things as part of our lives, and now we rely on them for our own well-being.
So how should we go about solving this problem?
Well, Mark Weiser from Xerox PARC in the 80s and 90s came up with this idea of calm technology. They prototyped this future in which we had all these different devices, and he found that the scarcest resource in this century was not going to be technology, it would be our own attention. And so if we design better technology that makes better use of our attention, not just our visual attention, but our hearing, our sense of touch, we can start to compress all that information into our peripheral attention and not have it bug us constantly every time we're trying to do something.
So can you give me an example of something you see has the potential to do just that, sort of be there in a non-intrusive way?
Okay, there's a few silly examples. One is it's a haptic device. It uses a sense of touch, and it buzzes you when you're slouching.
Okay.
So if I'm slouching right now, it would go buzz, and then
Okay.
So it's there when you need it, not when you don't. Another example is Roombas. Roomba vacuum cleaners, they go dun-da-da-da when they're done cleaning, and they have a nice little light on them, and they go dun-da when they're stuck. They're not trying to do everything for you because you're taking care of the piece of technology, and it's not making all the decisions for you, it's suddenly much more approachable. There's this kind of norm line in the middle where we're used to eyeglasses because they restore us to the norm. We're used to this new norm of phones with cameras, but anything above that, say Google Glass, hasn't really been metabolized into culture yet. People, the issue is that technology's there, and it's very advanced, but we as humans have to take a long time in order for us to be comfortable with it. So we can't just throw a bunch of technologies and features and allow people to use it. But any of those technologies that kind of smoothly enter in and out of our awareness, we can actually do a lot more with than just the technology that beeps us at all the time and tries to make decisions for us. I think the biggest issue is that a lot of times people try to make technology that acts like a human, and you know how annoying that is with those false voices, and that ends up putting people on pause. If you have ever tried to talk to Alexa or Siri, you're telling it something and it says, sorry, I didn't understand that. You have to speak like a robot, or something with a San Francisco perfect accent where it was programmed in order to understand it. Oftentimes we have the same kinds of programmers with the same ideas programming an app, and it doesn't really relate to the entire real world and all of those edge cases. So there's kind of these issues right now where we say, let's automate everything. But the minute you start to automate things, the most important part becomes the customer service to get you out of those weird little accidents where you get stuck in the automation trap.
Yeah, I think we all know what it's like to call a helpline and just get a voice which says press 1, press 2, and
right.
But how much of this is technology? Because there are apps that come out and work because people, it makes sense for people, and how much of it is us where we're, I don't know, not smart enough, not with it enough to get on the program?
So two responses. It's not that we're not smart enough to get with a program, it's that we don't have enough time to make learning that particular interface of the 70 or 80 user interfaces that we use every month a priority. So it's better to have a customer service person that understands this really complex system to help us out. Another example is in the banking industry specifically. Bank Simple, which is originally a Portland startup, they took all these complex regulations, the complexity of when you load your banking dashboard, and they made it really simple to use, so simple that you can use it in your mobile phone, and if you have an issue, you just chat right within the app and somebody will get in touch with you incredibly quickly. So it's basically said, we're going to make your user interface so good that the support will be incredibly minimal. And they took every single time it was really hard to use their interface, and they improved on it again and again and again so that the support service wasn't overwhelmed, so that people could easily get what they wanted. A lot of times people don't want all the complexities of something. They, sometimes you're a power user and you're going to use your own financial system, but for a lot of people, they want light banking apps, especially to get into banking. Robinhood's another example. Free trades, easy to use, mobile platform, right on your phone, invest in stuff really quickly, see your stocks. Really straightforward. Acorns is another example. Acorns takes, whenever you buy something at the store or at a restaurant, it rounds it up and gets that spare change and invests that in the background. And then eventually you get, some of this extra spare change and it turns into 500, 600, whatever. And that becomes really important because you don't have to notice that. You don't have to specifically try to invest things. It's the best of technology, that automation, that pattern recognition, and the best of humans freeing you up.
Well, is it then a case of technology wanting to do too much? Because it sounds like if we do less, just the simpler things, and a more progressive level, then people catch on and they learn with the technology as well, and eventually you can get to the more complicated things.
Yeah, I think that we want technology to do too much because we're the ones programming the technology. The technology is a reflection of us, and it's not separate from us at all. And I think that that's one of the principles of calm technology is the least amount of technology is the best to solve the problem. How can you use the least amount to do something? Because the more features you have, the more complexity you have, the longer it takes to support. We've seen large companies, of which I won't name, be incredibly expensive databases that don't reliably work, that are really just professional service shops that are giving you what you need, but it's a bunch of people behind the scenes trying to work with this complex technology. It doesn't really make sense to the customer.
So what's the missing link then? It seems that that communication between, I guess, what are they not understanding their customers and their needs, or are they just wanting to push this new technology, which could come from a startup saying, yeah, let's do this, with their own agenda, I guess?
I think it's both. The idea that we can automate everything. There was a great podcast about this startup guy in San Francisco. He'd never taken public transportation. He said, I want to automate this ticket system. It should be on your phone. You shouldn't have to have the information booth person. And the podcast journalist said, look, let's go down to the transit station, tell this woman that's sitting here at the info booth that you want to automate her job. And he said, okay, went downstairs and walked right up to her. Hi, you shouldn't exist. I want to automate your job. What would you rather do with your life? She's like, well, I like gardening, but I get plenty of time to do that. This is a very great job. He said, well, wouldn't it be better if everybody had this on their phones so that they could go through the ticket system? And she said, no. Because everyone's phones run out of battery at the wrong time. You have people coming in from different countries and they don't have the right app and they can't download it because they don't have a payment plan, because the payment plan is not global because it doesn't talk to each other. And then you've got a bunch of people who the ticket machine is down so they can't even buy a physical ticket, or the network is down because you're underground so you can't access that signal, or you've got one of 100 iPhones or Androids that don't run the software because there's a bug and it got hacked. And so right on cue, these two people from China, they came up and they said, hey, we need help. Where do we go? And she helped them out. And she said, look, it's always good to have a person who can understand the context, who can understand the edge cases, and who has some sort of history with the system. I mean, if you think about it, people are talking about having applications that help the blind get around a city. It's so expensive to support, maintain, and build an app for the blind, plus all of the infrastructure for locations and points of interest, and keep that up to date for a city. It's a lot cheaper to have a guide dog. Guide dogs take a few years to train. You can reproduce them because they reproduce. They have a pretty stable code base that's been evolving for millions of years. So, like, there's this idea where you kind of have more sentient beings work on some of the stuff, and the technology behind the scenes, like in Google, they have all these bots that index human stuff. So really, Google is a human resource of all the things that we've made, and we have some bots going around and indexing that for us. And so it's really a perfect unison between person and machine. It's not doing everything for you. You get to pick with that context out of those search results what you want.
But sometimes some might say, well, let's try it first. If we don't try it, we won't know. So let's push the boundaries, sure. Maybe we don't need robotic dogs, or maybe robotic dogs might be the answer for that cause, instead of guy.
You have to oil the robotic dog, and then what happens when it rains, and then what happens if if it's too sunny out, it overheats the circuit boards. All you have to do is give a dog a bunch of water and some food, and they'll be fine.
So are we reinventing just for the sake of reinventing?
I think it's really good to push the boundaries, actually. And oftentimes, I mean, it's good to experiment, and it's not a terrible thing to experiment, as long as you experiment with a small group at once. Like, for instance, when the Titanic ship came out, everyone said, this is the best luxury ship. It's massive. You can all ride on it. It's never going to crash. It's unsinkable. And one of the reasons why a lot of people died on the Titanic is because they built the ship too fast. They used low-grade rivets on the watertight compartments that sealed off the water from coming into the ship. The captain was going too fast, and even though there were enough lifeboats for everybody on board, people refused to go on the lifeboats because they thought the ship was unsinkable. There also were communication issues with new wireless telegraphy and communication between the systems on the ship, the captain and the crew below. So even though somebody said that they saw an iceberg, or they relayed out and said SOS, which was I think it was the first time they used SOS, nothing was happening, and a lot of people died. And so if we apply that to modern day technology, we've got security issues. We don't have enough watertight containers. They're not built of something that's reasonable enough. We don't have enough communication between teams, between the captain of the ship and the people actually doing a lot of the work. And we also, in marketing, say, this is a great system, right? I mean, remember when Siri came out? Siri will do all of your bidding and understand every word you say. That's physically impossible. You can't do that. And as somebody who's debated with my dad and my grandpa about AI for lots and lots of years, there's a limit, because we're in the real world. We're not in a mathematically perfect universe where you can have 100% of anything. We're in the real world, and no matter what, if you're talking into your phone, there's going to be a truck driving by and it won't understand you. In the same way, if we think of these like Titanic-type episodes, the Titanic sinking forced regulation in the shipping industry. They forced new communication rules, new building rules, and so I don't want this to happen, but it might end up happening. We might have a breach of trust where somebody hacks into a system that actually affects people's lives enough negatively enough that we end up having some real, not regulations, but guidelines and certifications, which could be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, sometimes tragedy does push us or push things very much faster. But what then? What would be your recommendation? How do we go about this then?
Well, ideally, just like, for instance, we have a lot of conferences that are all the same people, where they're one particular industry, and we're not really sitting at a table of like just 5 people and saying, I'm a regulator, and I'm a banker, and I'm a developer, and I'm, somebody else, I'm a designer, and actually saying like, here's the thing that annoys me about this industry, here's the thing that annoys me about this industry. We all get into these little bubbles where we all talk to each other, but then we forget that the regulators are trying to do their job, bankers are trying to do their job, user experience people are trying to do their job, and to respect each one and include them all on a team is really important. I mean, to go back to Star Trek, like the reason why the Starship Enterprise was so resilient is you had a bunch of different weird people on board, and they all worked together, and they were all up on the captain's deck. Right? The security was there, the empathic person was there, the robot was there, the engineer was there, and the captain was there.
So in that sense, then, for example, in the financial industry, are there not enough weird people at the table?
There's not enough weird people at the table. There's not enough weird people at the table in a lot of industries right now. I mean, if you think about tech, and now we're talking about fintech, tech was made by the weirdest people possible. Oftentimes, like SRI, Stanford Research Institute, was some place that you went if you didn't belong at Stanford, and you were just doing stuff because it was weird. And, there's all these games that came out of it, and then that pushed forward an industry. Or you have Richard Feynman at the Los Alamos project, like, building all these different new computing systems because there wasn't enough resources. For instance, they were having to fix their computers because it was a top secret project, so they couldn't just send their computers in and get them fixed. So they learned how to fix the computers even better than the technicians actually knew how to fix them up. So with those constraints, you end up breeding pretty interesting stuff. I mean, a lot of people forget that companies started with very little resources that were really ridiculous. Amazon, Microsoft, Apple, we have this idea of the garage space company, but how many people are actually starting a little startup in the garage? I think one of the other things that banks can do and fintech people can do is find and support the companies that abstract out and follow those regulations and make really good user interfaces. Hire and celebrate and support those teams, and try to have them integrate into their systems. That's going to be really hard because you have kind of a mismatch of blood, but if you can do it well and respect each other's teams and really come to the table on these issues, then you can do a lot together. But when you do bring those people in, they need to be at the same level as the executives, or it's really hard to do.
So ideally, the same level of weird people coming all together, that would be the perfect utopia.
Well, it could. Often they don't, they don't look or speak the same language in any way. But kind of getting over that and saying, okay, I understand what you're trying to say here is really important, and not taking anything personally.
And that's where it all begins. Well, thank you so much, Amber. That's great speaking to you.
That's why Sibos is such a draw, because people like Amber Case appearing. I mean, she brought the humanity back into technology. What a fantastic interview.
Made it very relevant for all of us to understand that really tech, as a lot of people have been saying, cannot work on its own. It's not just technology that's going to save the day. It's technology and how we use it and what it means to us. That makes a big difference. And just at the big issue debate, we're talking about how you can't work in isolation. So FinTech needs to talk to the banks, to the other industries, is bringing those weird people together at a table and having a chat.
So in essence, we're not going to be replaced by robots yet.
No, I think we're far from it, far from it.
Oh, beautiful interview with Amber Case. Well done, Stephen. Now, earlier in the conference, I caught up with Sue Dean, Head of Treasury Services for EMEA at JP Morgan, to talk about the major trends and innovations in global transaction banking. Transaction banking has attractive growth prospects if it can meet the demands from corporate and institutional users to transact more efficiently and safely and create new ways to drive revenue. And here to tell us more is Sue Dean, a senior leader for JP Morgan's Treasury Service businesses in EMEA. Sue, great to have you here.
Thank you very much.
What are the major trends that you're seeing in global transaction banking?
I mean, really, it's pretty much, as you summarised it at the start, it's how we transact more efficiently, more swiftly, but in a far more safer environment, because obviously we've seen a lot of cyber activity, and we really do need to be at the forefront of making sure that we're far safer in our environments for our clients.
And globally, is that the same across all regions, or does EMEA have its own distinct flavour?
No, I think there's always variations on a theme, but the trends are the trends globally. So you might see them begin to start in a particular region, but slowly those trends start to come out. But typically the global trends we do see consistently across the regions.
And let's think about those global innovations as well. What are you most excited about at the moment?
I think the financial technology space, just in terms of new and innovative technology that enables us to deliver for our clients. So we're doing a lot around the fintech space. You've heard about blockchain, and blockchains being discussed extensively here at Sibos. But what does it really mean? It's technology, but now we're at the point where we can start to test and validate blockchain and its applicability within the financial space. You know, really, what does it bring, and what value does it bring to the organisation? So an area we're piloting at the moment within JP Morgan.
So you say you're piloting at the moment. How much piloting have you got to do on this? Is there a lot of groundwork still to be done? Are you ready in the next 12 months, do you think?
No, we've started already. So blockchain's already very much being used as part of our day-to-day activities, but very cautiously. What we've got to do is make sure that it does what we need it to do, and that we can scale it up. And then how do we bring it into the payments infrastructure? So blockchain at the moment, very closed user groups internally within JP Morgan, but can you extend that out? How do you extend it out? Capacity being one of the key questions.
I'm interested to find out what the main drivers are behind the dramatic transformation in the payments landscape.
Okay, so I think there's loads of things. You've got e-commerce that's coming through very, very strongly. You've got faster payments. Now, faster payments isn't necessarily new in certain jurisdictions, but it's coming out much more vigorously across the globe. So how do you respond to that? How do you respond to the requirements of faster payments, yet still transact safely? So on one hand, you want to do things quicker, but on the other hand, you want to bring in more robust controls to ensure that you are absolutely executing as intended.
So where do real-time payments fit into those faster? Because you can't get any faster than real-time.
Oh, well, I mean, real-time is, you're absolutely right. And what we want to do and what we want to see is the beneficiary getting the payment at the earliest possible opportunity. But a lot of it is about transparency. It's about the beneficiary knowing that they've received something. So GPII here, and that again is something that's been discussed at Sibos. How do you see that transaction flow right from the point of remittance through to the beneficiary, so they know they've got that money and they can start to use that money? All wants to be done instantaneously, and whilst you are instantaneous, how do you put all your controls and checks in place?
Yeah, it's a difficult managed one to balance, isn't it? And how about the challenges emerging for banking clients? How do you see that?
The challenges emerging, I think they've emerged. That they're really ones that we're now working through. So it's the controls, the regulatory environment, how we respond to the regulatory environment, how we look beyond the principles and strengthen further than actually the regulatory, I suppose, remits that we have. But more importantly, as banks, how do we make sure that we shield our clients from some of the challenges of responding to the regulatory changes? I mean, it impacts us all, but we have a responsibility, and certainly at JP Morgan, we look at how we introduce things and drive our clients as seamlessly as we can through those regulatory changes.
So you're talking about
Easier
shielding.
said than done.
I know.
Easier said than done.
Well, I'd love to hear about your plans about shielding. So how do you navigate your clients through that tricky landscape?
I think it's strong communication at the earliest opportunity, so our clients can weave those changes into future plans. I think what we find with our clients, if we come and talk to them about a change and the change is happening now, you don't give them the lead time or the opportunity to plan to make the changes that are required from their perspective. Equally, some of the changes that we've seen are certainly around liquidity and our liquidity products. Again, upfront discussion with the client, strong communication, giving them the ability to plan.
Which sounds like there'll be some great growth opportunities for them. So where do you see the key growth opportunities for your clients?
The growth is really just continuing for them to sort of go into new markets, additional currencies, and again, picking up all of the new innovative type payment opportunities that they they can then deliver to their clients or offer to their clients. So it really is just being at the forefront so our clients have choices about how they want to use the new innovative products that are coming to market.
And how do you think they do want to use it at the moment? What's your guide to how your clients are telling you what they are getting from innovations in payments? What's the areas that they are most attracted to?
Again, it comes back to the three key things. They want to do things very swiftly, very efficiently, and in a safe environment. And it really, if you keep to those three principles, then our clients are really then looking at then what's the value over the safely, efficiently, and safely. So how can they then extract value from their working capital? And really sort of then begin to sort of look at cash more vigorously in terms of managing their own day-to-day activities.
Yeah, absolutely. And diversity and inclusion was a key topic last year at Sibos in Singapore. In fact, it's been on the agenda for a few years now. And as you as a senior figure in the banking industry, can you give me your thoughts on where you see the financial world when it comes to diversity and inclusion? How well are they doing, say, against other industries?
Well, I personally think they're doing tremendously well. I think it's a topic that's constantly at the fore. And again, if I talk about JP Morgan, diversity is continually on the agenda, and we're continually looking at ways at promoting and retaining our top diverse talent. And there's many ways that we do it through mentoring programs, through business resource groups where we get like individuals together that discuss common challenges about how you progress within certain sort of diverse groups. So I do think it's front and fore, but there's always more to do. But I certainly have benefited from a terribly diverse organisation such as JP Morgan.
And what does diversity actually mean to you? Because I know it means different things to different people. It's a hard one to define sometimes, but what does diversity mean to you?
I think diversity just means equal to all. There are no parameters, there are no boundaries around an individual. It's truly based on their abilities and their contribution to the organisation. And that's genuinely how I see it.
So what could the rest of the industry do, outside of JP Morgan, do to help encourage more diversity and inclusion for those institutions that may not be in the same place that you are at the moment? What are your tips for them?
I mean, that's quite a broad question in terms of there's so many different industries out there, but I think it has to start at the grassroots. You have to look at the base education, and when diverse groups are going through the education, are you encouraging them to take and explore different types of topics that might not have been the stereotypical topics of the past? But I think that's happening. So I think it just has to start at the very, I suppose, the point of education, and then we encourage it through into their careers.
And in terms of Sibos this year, have you mapped out the sessions that you're most looking forward to?
Oh, well, I'm certainly going to go to all the sessions where the JP Morgan speakers are attending.
Oh, very loyal.
I know, but they are good speakers, so I'm going to enjoy those.
Are you speaking or not, are you?
I'm not,
okay.
No. So I've recently just taken over this role, so I think it was a little bit too soon just to take on any speaking engagement. But I also, cyber is one of the ones that I'm really, really interested in, because as fast as you go, unfortunately, you've got the fraudsters are equally as fast. So how do you get ahead, really truly get ahead of some of the challenges in the cyberspace? Cyber is one. Blockchain's another one, because I'm really interested in just generally what the industry is doing and how others are progressing.
Yeah, cyber resilience is an interesting area. So, that's getting to all the boardrooms now, isn't it?
Oh,
in financial
definitely.
institutions. So how seriously are you looking at that at the moment?
Oh, tremendously. I mean, we've got a number of staff that work solely on cyber activity, investing a huge amount of dollars into it as well, and really want to be at the forefront. And it's not just about investing the dollars, clearly that's important, but it's around education. Again, back to communication. Are we talking to our clients about it? Are we sharing best practices? Are we taking their best practices as well? Because it's for all of us to contribute in terms of sharing how we combat cyber fraud, fight cybercrime.
And your priorities for the next year? I know you're new to the role. Have you thought about those, what they're going to be, you and your team?
Yeah, so I have thought about them initially, and really it's about continuing the growth agenda. I mean, it's incredibly important to JP Morgan as a whole, and continuing to drive that growth. So to drive that growth, what do we need to deliver? So growth is absolutely my focus, 2016 and beyond.
Okay, and when you mentioned about blockchain as well, what's your particular interest in that subject while you're here at Sibos?
Really how you begin to extend it out. So we look at closed user groups, and actually it's internal JP Morgan transferring of or network payments, we're calling it, where we go between branches and we use the blockchain technology. But what's its applicability beyond internal transfer or execution of payments? So how can we take it beyond, and what value does it bring?
And I know you mentioned as well the Global Payment Innovation Initiative. What were you hoping to get out of those sessions?
I think the absolute transparency. So really what we're hearing from our clients is they want to know absolutely finite once that transaction has reached the beneficiary. So really how far away from it? I mean, there's a huge amount of work that's been completed. The platform's there. We've all got to sign up and really sort of commit to this being an important data point for our clients.
And is there anything you can mention maybe about working with governments and regulatory bodies more closely? Is that something you see as an industry you're moving more towards?
I think we've always done it in terms of wanting to be very much considering what regulators are bringing in, looking at how they've constructed sort of the regulation and how we can then contribute in terms of taking the principle and strengthening it, or looking at maybe some of the unintended consequences of those regulations. So I think that just needs to continue, because if you come together, all these bodies come together, then we'll get the strength that we're looking for in terms of the regulatory environment.
So it's not all about work. There must be plenty of networking opportunities for you.
Oh, there's a tremendous amount of networking opportunities. And where do you get an opportunity to see so many of your industry colleagues and valued clients in one concentrated place? There's plenty of opportunities, and we are enjoying those opportunities as well.
Well, Nadine, an absolute pleasure to have you here today. So thank you very much for taking your time to talk to us on Sibos TV.
Great. Thank you very much, Nadine.
Nadine earlier on in the week. That seemed like years ago, actually.
That's right, it does. But she did touch on the GPI initiative, and we'll have some folks coming into the show in just a short while to talk more about that. But first, if you're staying on in Geneva after the conference and perhaps wondering where to go, where to eat, Nadine's been out and about exploring the options. Take a look.
Switzerland has borders with Italy, France and Germany. And as you can imagine, they have a strong influence on the local food. There's still lots of local specialities to try. You can't visit Geneva without trying the traditional fondue. If you're looking for a typical Swiss experience in an historical setting, Hotel des Amours is the place to go. Over the years, it's become one of Geneva's favourite restaurants. A great place to people watch in central Place du Moulard is Café du Centre.
The Café du Centre has existed since 1933 and situated in the middle of Geneva, right on the Place du Moulard. What's unique about the Café du Centre is that we are one of the only seafood restaurants in the middle of Geneva. Everybody likes to come to the Café du Centre. We're as popular with tourists as we are with the locals. The locals come every day. We have our regulars, and during the summer months we get lots and lots of tourists that like to pass by and just absorb the atmosphere.
Set in the market area of Carouge is the charming Café du Marché. Open from 6:30 in the morning to cater for the market traders until 11:30 at night. It makes this cafe popular at any time. And what better way to accompany the local fare than with a glass of Swiss wine, one of the region's best kept secrets.
Oh, that was fantastic, actually. Going around Geneva, I mean, what a treat it was.
You know, lucky you, because you got to do it all very quickly, for work as well.
It was.
Whereas people are doing it after work. Let's continue our discussion. I had a chat with Shekhar Bhandari, the head of global transaction banking and precious metals at Kotak Mahindra Bank a bit earlier, and he was talking to me about India's banking revolution. Indian banking is undergoing a digital revolution. By 2020, the average age in India will be 29, and this consumer base of digital natives in both urban and rural areas is demanding mobile and internet banking. As well, banks are using data to transform their own processes, including customer management, security, and risk management. My guest today is Shekhar Bhandari, head of global transaction banking and precious metals at Kotak Mahindra Bank. Welcome to the show. Shekhar, let me start by asking you, the Indian banking sector making rapid advances in technology. What are some of the recent game-changing technology trends that have been introduced?
Steve, I think, thanks for the introduction. And India is a young country. A young country, a lot of banks coming up, new payment banks being given. You see, I think, everything new and I think happening over there. NPCI, which is National Payment Corporation of India, formed by Reserve Bank, is the one which is pioneering the entire payment space in India. And that has made the best, or I think they are the best in the world as of now in terms of advancement of technology.
So tell me, how has this payment space changed?
5 years back and now you will find real-time transfers happening. IMPS, I think one of the best schemes, I think which immediate payment transfer happen in India now, 24/7. A few others with total security. UPI, United Payment Interface, I think the new age technology, so-called as a blockchain, which the entire world talks about. India has introduced, on the payment side, a blockchain called UPI.
Okay, so this method of blockchain you found, it's worked well?
It has been introduced, I think, somewhere in January. There are 30-odd banks which have come in and joined in. There are 22-odd which are likely to join in a couple of months. And then you see, I think, all the bankers who are actually the partners in the UPI and the NPCI come together. You have a purchaser, you have seller, I think all of them happening on the one platform, and I think the data being stored. Okay. All the features of blockchain come over here, interoperability, APIs, through which I think the whole function is able to work.
So in this case, it's a national, or the government rather, bringing everyone together. Is that correct?
It's a independent company, which is a Section 25 company in India, not for profit. All the banks are shareholders of that company.
Right.
And governed and I think advised by Reserve Bank of India, the central bank. Mm-hmm. Each of the banks, being the partners, come and contribute over there, decide together, I think, what is it, how the payment system, payment things need to grow in India. And since everybody's a partner, I think the pull and the push mechanism makes it very, very versatile for the Indian sector to make payments, I think, interoperable.
Well, you were telling me a bit earlier when we had a chat that Kotak is one of the earlier pioneers in many media platforms, social media, reaching out to many young people. I mean, what was the draw? Why did you see that as the key to the next step forward?
Kotak Mahindra Bank is a young bank. I think one of the banks which entered in 2003 to enter India. And from there on, it has become the fourth largest bank in the country in terms of market cap. What has made it? I think it is young, agile, able to understand customer needs, able to design solutions accordingly. So I think a fintech requires new thoughts, new innovations. Kotak, if you were to call it, is innovative over there. Mm-hmm. Kotak is the first bank, I think we have a Twitter, we have a hashtag banking with Twitter being a partner. We have a social account called Jiffy, so I think you can open an account with Social Plus
Okay, and is that quite unusual for banking in India?
It is unusual for world. So I think you don't have any, I think India is Kotak Mahindra Bank is the first bank in the world to be, I think, a social banker across.
And targeting young people, one might say, but they have no money. So
you're right, but I think they do drive a lot many decisions. Example, I think if you have specific children and you develop the skill sets of savings in them, they are able to influence something to open the account. India has 21% of its savings going into on the financial side, which means people do save for children, people do save for their retirement, and in case you are able to channelize those resources, it can be, I think, an excellent business model.
So I guess this is also a bit more of a long-term view, because many folks are saying that India is one of those areas where it's still relatively untapped to a certain extent, and the sector has great potential to grow. I mean, is that the plan looking forward? Is that what your bank is looking to do, a more long-term view of the situation?
Overall, India is a big country. I think 1.3 billion people, almost a billion of people, I think, who are mobile. But only, I think, probably, I think 400 million who have bank accounts. In fact, 235 million accounts were opened in last 2 years, thanks to the scheme which was launched by the Prime Minister of India for Jan Dhan, which is a bank account for a common man. Jan Dhan plus something called Aadhaar, we call it the social security contribution, social security mechanisms by which the money had to be transferred to the accounts. And the mobile, I call the jam moment for the Indian side. You require jam every day for the bread. I think India is in a jam story. J for Jan Dhan, A for Aadhaar, which is 800 odd million accounts which are in the in the Aadhaar scheme, and I think on the mobility side.
Okay, but you're not in a jam. You're actually getting people out of a jam, because what the technology does is it leapfrogs, saves the banks having to build any infrastructure, but allows anyone to have access to mobile banking, right? And these numbers have grown because of mobile banking?
Jam is for India. Jam is an opportunity available to to the entire India. And when you have so many consumers, technology comes in and addresses each one of them. The traditional banking model works on top-down model, so you address the top guys and then and come to the mass side. I think the fintech and the new age companies will generally start from the bottom, address the mass, and come up. And mobiles, a billion people, I think, available to you through mobile banking, I think, is what is available to technology. Aadhaar, which is the unique identification number available to the Indians, I think gives you something which is linked to the bank account. And on top of that, I think the Jan Dhan, which is the opening of bank accounts, all put together becomes an excellent thing, technology and people. Okay.
And is this something that all the banks are on board with? I mean, are they able to keep up with the change in technology? Because technology can change very quickly. And an old bank with large infrastructure may say it may not be worth the cost. I've invested too much in my infrastructure already. So is that a challenge for India, having some of the older banks try and keep up with what's changing?
World is changing. India is changing. It is your customer which is driving your behavior. I generally call it the Uberization of the customer experience. And if every customer wants to have an experience, I think banks have to come together or on their own to come and address those needs. Are the banks? I think there are a good amount of innovations which are driven centrally, especially on the payment side, and all the other aspects. You have the digital revolution which is working significantly across. There are a few banks which are much ahead, like Kotak Mahindra Bank, and there are a few banks which are catching up, and especially the public sector banks.
Is this something the customers in India want? Have you found that they have been embracing this change quite wholeheartedly?
Yes, I think when e-com companies came in or when the non-banking companies came in and offered wallet solutions to Indian customers, I think the number of accounts they opened were much, much more than the banking accounts. When the mobile companies came and gave solutions to them in terms of payment solutions, I think the Indian customers came up and lapped it up, and they shifted from banking to for small payments. All this is what the customer is driving across in the industry, be it technology, be it systems, and be it, I think, whatever the banking needs to do to address all their needs. It is important for the bankers that they are part of, I think, everyday life of an individual, starting from the morning. If I can get, I think, if I have to get some tea, I think if I'm associated in some manner, take a cab to office, I think I am connected in one manner or the other. I'm having a breakfast at a hotel. I think there's some connection required, lunch, and then I think when I go on a holiday, similar thing, buying something. If you're not connected at every touch point, you will generally find that you are missing something which somebody else will take away.
But is this changing the environment for India? Because it's very much known that cash was king for a long time. Has this now made it, as you mentioned, for small payments, make it so I buy tea, I can use my mobile phone to pay for it as well? Is that a significant change for the country?
You see the number of transactions which are there. I think significant jump in, we have seen, I think, 150% jump in terms of year-on-year increase on the transactions which are happening through the digital side. The deposits which we are seeing, I think 56% of my deposits come to the digital mode. Did we see it probably 6 years back? We didn't even think that that is possible. I think whether it is e-com companies or the digitalization which is happening in the world, all are making, I think, everyone to be on their toes and do something for the customer.
Do you think that percentage will go up? You've mentioned it's about in the 50s now. Do you expect more of your customers to be using those platforms and that number or percentage rather, to increase?
We generally measure, I think, digitization sales in terms of the world averages. Kotak Mahindra Bank is at 133 people per 1,000 people who are active with us in terms of shifting to digital side. The world average is somewhere at 76, and the India is somewhere at 80. And when you see, I think, that thing happening, I call India is much, much ahead in terms of what is happening even around the world in terms of digitization and technology.
So we've talked about all the good things, but there must be some downside. What do you think are the challenges that the country will face in this area?
Security remains the biggest thing if I were to call anything which comes with technology. One has to be, I think, very, very cautious in developing systems as well as ensuring that it is the genuine people who are able to make a use of this and not, I think, non-genuine people. It is also important that the Know Your Customer, which is KYC norms, are very, very strict in India. And it is important that it is able to coexist with the Know Your Customer requirements, as well as a small person or a gentleman, I think, who wants to have a transaction of 1,000 rupees.
Right.
I think, can you probably make it, I think, a bit more congenial in terms of moving forward. Also, I think regulator, banks, and I think all the fintech players, if they come together and work, I think the solutions are better. Otherwise, if one only competes against each other,
right,
I'm not sure whether I think how far one will go. And if you don't collaborate, I think you don't proceed forward.
But that is the challenge, right? Getting everyone to work together. That's. Let me ask you, since you're here at Sibos, what are some of the things you're looking forward to? Maybe very quickly share with us. What are some of the talks or sessions that you are hoping to listen in?
Sibos is the place to be for technology, for payments, for something on the transaction banking, or something, I think, for all the bankers, I think, come under one roof. The new thoughts and the new innovations which are developed and seen over here, I think we take an input of that and move forward in terms of probably finding solutions for the customer. You get to meet a lot of many friends over here, which is good to catch up, otherwise which is not possible in the normal cycle across from around the world.
That's true. Everyone coming from all over the world for one common reason.
8,000 odd people, I think, and
That's right.
of them professionals. I think it is quite good, and I think quite good.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for speaking with us. Just been speaking with Shekhar Bhandari, Head of Global Transaction Banking and Precious Metals at Kotak Mahindra Bank.
Thank you, Steve.
So I did have a chat with Shekhar just a few days ago, and I did see him on the floor talking to people. So I think he achieved his goal of networking. You know, that's what this event is also significantly about.
It is, and it's great to hear about India's banking revolution as well. So great interview again. Now, when cross-border payments are made, all the parties in the chain, that's banks and corporates, get very little information on what's happening to the payment. But that's all about to change thanks to SWIFT's Global Payments Innovation, or GPI initiative.
And here to tell us more about it and its successful pilot are some of its members. Buitenhek, Global Head of Transaction Service ING. Paula, Roels, she is the Head of Market Infrastructure and Industry Initiatives at Deutsche Bank, and John Hunter, Managing Director, USD Clearing Treasury Services at JP Morgan. Welcome, guys.
Welcome. Mark, if I could start with you to begin with, just set some context for us. I mean, what is the purpose of the GPI initiative? And more importantly, is it going to make cross-border payments better?
Yeah, that is, of course, the ultimate purpose, to make it better, and from different angles, like increasing the speed, doing this within 1 day, increasing transparency in terms of the fees, and maybe even the most important part, understanding where actually the payment is or when you see it coming, including all the remittance information that is in it. It's the ultimate, the goal to go for with GPI.
We know about 90 banks have signed up for the initiative, and Paula, I'm going to ask you because Deutsche Bank is one of them who've joined the initiative as well. So why have the banks signed up? Why did you guys sign up?
Well, Mark just explained it very well. This is actually where we want to enable our customer and our customers' customers who are actually acting globally now and actually embracing the digital world to basically understand, where is my payment, to have the confidence that we will be settled it with the value they actually requesting it, and to have the transparency about the charges and to keep the reference at the end, unaltered end to end. A very good reason. We didn't have that before. GPI will connect the ecosystem and will deliver on this.
And John, from your point of view, how do you expect GPI will impact on the bank's back offices?
I think that's a great question. I think we talk a lot about GPI and we talk about how it's going to influence our clients and the client experience. I do think there's a great opportunity for banks in the back office, right? When we look at this idea of being able to get confirmation back, probably our number one inquiry we get from our clients is, where's the money, where's the payment?
Yeah.
And if we can get that information coming in systemically and can immediately be able to respond back to our clients, not only is that a good customer experience, but it really will provide us some operational efficiency.
Well, as you mentioned, traceability is one of the key benefits of the GPI initiative. Speed, transparency on fees as well. The others, Matt, how is all this going to apply to corporates?
Well, that's actually where we started off with their needs. And if you see, the world has become much more international, especially because of e-com. People are doing much more across the world. So one of the key things here is it will facilitate international business. That is one. The second, it will improve the relationship with your supplier because you know now exactly where the payment is and when it's coming, etc. You don't have to call anymore and track it and trace it. And maybe even more important, it will increase the efficiency of a corporate. Reconciliation issues, etc. You will immediately recognize what is coming. So those are the key three benefits, I would say, for corporates.
And Paula, from your point of view, how do you feel GPI will actually help banks track payments better?
So basically, if you take what Mark was saying, and what John actually saying is, today, we already have a pretty good, automated solution on SDP processing, as well as visibility on, the process within our organization. The innovative cloud-based solution is going to connect the ecosystem and will provide us at any point in time and any pain point, actually, no matter where you are, the possibility to basically look up the transaction and see where it is and automate actually the feed as well into our investigation system. So even if one of the parties is not connected, we're going to enable them at the fingertip to understand where it is.
And just explain what kind of information they're actually going to see.
And so they will not only see, where is my payment, of course, all actually secure, safe and secure. So depending on who is actually inquiring, we will enable the customer to see, where is my payment, what is the status of the payment, is it processed, is it actually pending for whatever reason, might be even the reason why it's pending, and also the level of charges deducted in a payment chain.
Okay, so it's quite comprehensive.
Absolutely.
But it's making life easier for everyone. That's essentially it. John, you guys have been on the pilot. Perhaps you can share with us how that has been so far?
So the pilot's gone great. I think we've worked with our other pilot banks to exchange messages, and I think the key message is that we see GPI working. That there's been efficiency for JP Morgan in our relationship with our counterparties through what we've stood up with the pilot. Did you have to make any significant changes in the infrastructure to pilot this program? I mean, there absolutely are technology changes that need to be put in place to implement GPI, but from a JP Morgan perspective, it was, I think, less than we initially anticipated.
And how about your experience, Mark? Because I know you've been involved in the pilot too.
Yes, absolutely. And we were on purpose. We wanted to participate in the pilot to, at an early stage, detect what could go wrong and where we needed to automate differently in the next phase. Because we started this sort of a manual kind of pilot and then slowly moving on into automation. And doing this in the first phase, it helps you tremendously in building the right technology for the next phase. So, yeah, we really enjoyed it, yeah.
So it's finalised, is it then, the first phase of the actual pilot? Just, if people are new to this, just give us an understanding of the pilot, where we are with this.
Well, I think we're in the preparation now for the actual launch for next year, the V1 version, as it's being called internally. Yeah, and what you see is 21 banks joined the pilot, 15 of them are already working on their automation. And I just heard that now 88 banks have signed up, so another 2 this day. It's fantastic how things are growing. And out of that 80, the other group, another 10 have already started automating, which gives you a feeling of where this is going through. If people at this stage, this product has just been launched, right? And people are now already working on the automation. It shows the agile way, not only of the way Swift developed this, but also banks that are jumping on it. There's a clear need. That is absolutely clear.
Yeah.
Well, Paula, let us ask you, your sense on the ground that people are excited about the GPI initiative, I mean?
Absolutely, and we should actually not basically ignore the fact that cross-border correspondent banking payments cross-border right now, there's hardly any an alternative in terms of reach, in terms of just speed and transparency under the the highest level of compliance and security measures, right? So for corporates are very excited and they're really demanding that. They are actually demanding it sooner than we even can walk right now.
Yeah.
So it sounds like they're putting pressure. And John, from your point of view, are banks still able to actually join the initiative? And if so, how do they sign up?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've had lots of discussions with other banks here at Sibos. All of our discussions seem to have somehow included GPI. The questions are pervasive. Everyone's interested in understanding what it is and how it works. I think if clients are interested in signing up, the opportunity is to go to Swift, talk to the representative at Swift, or you can even go to the Swift website and understand the documentation that's there to understand more about that product, and you can actually enroll directly.
Well, Mark, also perhaps you can share with us sort of the roadmap for the initiative. What's next?
Yeah, what is next? And I can tell you the wish list is immense. The banks that are involved in this first phase, in conjunction with their corporates, came up with a list, I think, of more than 75 large wishes that are now condensed to, let's say, 4 or 5. And to mention a few, this is about further enrichment of the payments. It's about sending a payment request. Instead of sending a payment, you send a request and then you get paid back, which is very interesting. And the last part is working on stop payment, so that at a certain point in time you can actually stop the payment immediately if something goes wrong or for whatever kind of reason. And the last thing I want to say is that working on, let's say, gradual improvement, there's also a radical thinking line where together with fintechs, corporates, etc., we're looking at a further radical innovation step. Truly agile, and that's maybe not V2, but maybe V3. That's what's coming next. A true transformation.
And I know it's the last day of the conference, the final few hours. So you've mentioned already how people can find out information. Anything else you want to add to that? How can people find out more? I know I'm going to hold up a little brochure now as well, which we've been reading diligently, haven't we?
Yeah, but there's also a modern way of doing that. You can download the GPI app.
Shock horror.
There is a GPI app with beautiful statements by corporates who are actually testimonying it, giving their testimonials about how they feel about this initiative. You can go to your Swift website, your Swift manager, and you can go to banks that are already part of this pilot.
Yeah. I think most importantly, I mean, speak to Swift, speak to others who have been on the pilot, get a sense of whether it makes sense for your organization, for your bank. So on this last day, we're going to ask you about, you guys, do you hear about the cuckoo clock, the cuckoo party? No.
They've got flights to catch.
I've been
you
trying to
what.
find out who's going to this party. So many people are leaving, but
You could go
it's
to the
going to be a
party.
good one.
Yeah.
Okay. John and I will hang out.
Yeah, indeed. And just tell us, very quickly, why you love coming to Sibos. Let's just go round down the line. If I can start with you, John, to begin with.
Sure. I love going to Sibos because I love speaking with everyone and understanding what the vibe is in the industry. You really get a good feel for what's going on, what people are thinking about, where the interests are. And it's a great chance to catch up with many of your clients as well.
Yeah. Paula?
I love the platform because this is basically for me like he meets yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So we reflect on what we did so far. We tackle real market problems. GPI is one of them, and we talk about the new to come, which comes with new technologies, etc. So that's the reason why.
Mark.
That's going to be very difficult. No, it's about today, it's about tomorrow, it's about network, it's about content, And it's also a bit about friends. So
That's right.
I really
This is
love
true.
coming here.
And it's not a one-stop conversation. It continues and evolves, and we hope next year we'll all come back and have that conversation again and say, hey, this is where we're at now.
And in fact, John has got
It's-
an easier ride because you're just coming up maybe from Tampa
That's right.
to Toronto.
Depends. Oh, that's true.
Yeah,
That's true.
it's
And of
really
course,
good.
I've had a great time checking out all the coffee at all the different booths.
Yes, it's been
So that's been,
fantastic. Well, thank you
Thank
so
you,
much
folks.
for your contributions today. It's been great to talk to you about the GPI initiative, and we do wish you the very best. Thank you very much
Our
indeed.
pleasure.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be back with Sibos today at 4 o'clock. That is an hour later than usual. You want to join us then for the build-up to the closing plenary.
Oh, I'm very excited about that, yes. But coming up right after this programme, emerging markets, mobile money and financial inclusion. And that's going to be live from Conference 3.
We'll
We'll
see you
see you
later.
later.